everybody. Welcome to my very last painting class here with the Hardin County Library. If you've taken one of my classes before, I've been doing them at the library here for the last about 3 years, I think. For the last year or so, we've been online. So thank you to anybody who has ever taken one of my classes, if this is your first one. Our older classes, at least the last year of them, can be found online if you're wanting to do any other ones. Today, I wanted to make this one a little bit special for my last class. I will be moving out of state, which is why I'm not going to continue doing classes anymore. So I wanted to do a painting that was going to be special to Kentucky. When I used to work at a painting studio, this one was really popular with a lot of people. You can put anything in the middle that you want. People have put I Heart Kentucky, Kentucky Strong. Some people do their hometown name, they'll do their name, coordinates of where their town is, or they'll mark their town in the state. There's a lot of things that you can do here, and so this is a really fun one. We'll only need one little special thing, or I'll say we'll have an option of having a special thing. If you have been on the library's Facebook page, you should have seen a Google document where you can print out this template to be able to trace the Kentucky onto your canvas. And so a few things. I'm going to teach you how to freehand this. I know. Seems a little intimidating, but it's okay. So you don't need this. If you haven't printed this out, that's okay. I'll walk you through it step by step. If you're a little nervous about making this shape, that's okay. You can certainly print this out. It's a complicated shape. This specific template is sized for a 16 by 20 canvas, which, again, if you've ever been in a class with me in person or taken a regular paint and sip type class, that's usually the size canvas you'll see. If you have a smaller canvas, you can always use this template. Your state will just be bigger. Or you can size the template down, whatever works for you. If you don't want to do Kentucky, if you happen to be in another state, or if you are originally from another state and you have a special state that you want to work with, all you have to do is Google an outline of the state and you can print that out and use that as a template on your canvas. The only thing that you probably want to do is that you want the template of whatever state or shape you're doing to fill as much of a standard size piece of printer paper as you can, because one full, 8.5 by 11 sheet of printer paper is going to fit pretty well on this 16 by 20 canvas. The ratio is the best if you fill up as much of the page as you can. So if you want your template, you can have that. It'll print out on a big piece of paper. You can cut that out and you'll have this. I have a little piece of tape on the back of mine so we can stick it on there to trace. But again, you don't need that, but if you want it, we'll have it as we go through. And so the rest is just going to be our standard supplies here. We need our canvas, we need our rag or a paper towel, our water, our palette or something to mix our paint in. We have our paints. I've gotten a green recently. So again, you only need your primary colors. I would say your red, your yellow, your blue, your black, and your white. But if you have other colors, if you have I have a purple today, I have a green today, I'm really branching out here. If you have pinks, if you have oranges, feel free to use those. You don't need to mix all of your colors, but if you want to practice mixing, that's fine too. We have our brushes. We're going to at least need one big brush for the background. I'll say one medium-sized brush to do some of the flower details, and then some of the smaller brushes to do our little leaves and our smaller little details. We need a blow dryer. We'll probably use that maybe once. And then that should be it. And so again, if you want to use that template and you need to print it out, go ahead and you can pause the video now and go get your template, come back. If you're going to freehand it with me, you can definitely do that. I'm going to be doing it with the paintbrush. If you want to try to freehand it but you're nervous about the paint, you can always use a pencil. There's a couple different ways to do this, so don't be nervous. Nothing is permanent with paint. We will get there no matter what. So let me just rearrange and we'll get started. Okay, I need this, this. Okay. So as always with these classes, if you have any questions as we're going, I'll be paying attention when the class goes on. So feel free to leave me a comment if I'm going too fast or if something that I say doesn't make sense. You can certainly ask me. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab my big brush. This one is maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches. If you have a big, like a house brush, something like this, you can use that too. We're going to start in the background as always, and we're going to work our way to the foreground. So what that's going to look like for this painting is that we're going to do the blue, or what's in the background. You can change the color if you want. Then we're going to do the outline of our state. Then we're going to do our flowers on the outside, and then we're going to fill in the center with whatever we want to fill it in with. Okay? So first things first, we're going to grab our big brush. We are going to grab our background color plus white. So you can make this background whatever color you want. I think this is kind of a unique painting in that the foreground, I'll say, images, so the flowers can be absolutely whatever color you want. I think that this painting kind of benefits from a lot of color. So I have red flowers, purple flowers, yellow, I have pink ones, I have orange ones, we have green. I have pretty much every color in there except blue because blue's in the background. So if you could make your background any color and it would pretty much go with what we're going to do in the foreground. So if you have a certain color you want to go for in the background, definitely feel free to do so. It doesn't have to be blue. But whatever color we're going to use in the background, the style of background that I did for this one is going to be kind of like it's almost like a tie-dye looking background. Very easy. And the reason why I did this background is because I don't want to jinx us, but it's easy to cover mistakes if we make a mistake. Not saying we're going to make a mistake, but if we do, it's easy to kind of patch up this background. And so I'll show you how we're going to do that. We're going to take our big brush. I spilled a little bit here, so I already have some white. And I'm going to do the white and blue, but if you want to do an orange background, you can do orange and white. If you want to do a pink background, do red and white. Purple background, purple and white. So whatever color you choose plus your white. And you're going to just dip your brush in both, not in a neat way or half and half, whatever you want. You're just going to dip in both colors. And you're going to do crisscrosses, you're going to do figure eights, up, down, diagonal, backwards, forwards, both sides of the brush. We're just going to get in there and go for it. So up, down, and sideways. Both colors are going to mix together. The more irregular your brush strokes are, the better. And if you have areas that are lighter and areas that are darker, that's completely fine. So in some areas, if you want to put a little more blue on your brush, and then in other areas you want to make your brush a little whiter, you can do that. If you want your background to be very dark, use a higher ratio of white to your color. So we're just going back and forth, up, down, very random. The key to this background is the texture, because there isn't a huge, I'll say, I mean there is a focal point, but there's not a lot going on in this painting. It's going to be just our outline and then our flowers surrounding. So we need kind of a textured background to give this painting a little bit of an extra something. Make sure that if you intend to hang this painting, you do your left side, your right side. You can do your top and your bottom if you want. Not a necessity, but and you're going to be able to see your brush strokes. That is what we're going for here. If you want your canvas to be completely smooth, you can certainly do that. You're just going to get a different look than we have here. And like I said, this kind of textured background is for a purpose. Now again, I'm not saying we're going to make mistakes, but the background texture is kind of going to protect us in the event that we do make a mistake, or if we want to start a certain part over, that's totally fine. This textured background is going to make it easy for us to do that. And it looks interesting. Okay, so you see how it looks a little bit tie-dye. You've got areas that are darker, you've got areas that are lighter. A little variety goes a long way. I don't have big globs of each color together. If you look, my paintbrush is pretty even at this point. Pretty even sky blue. And for that background, I'll say I'm done. I'll leave it a little bit lighter than I did that background. All right, so once your background is done, you are going to rinse this brush. If you want to leave it in there, you probably can. I don't think we'll need this one again. All right, easy. There's our background. And so next thing we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to trace our stencil on there to make our Kentucky or whatever state shape you want. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a pause, because if you want to use the stencil, then your background's going to have to be dry. You'll see I just attached the stencil to the canvas. I'll do it over here. With a little piece of tape, and then I just paint around it with a paintbrush. So in order for the tape to stick on the canvas and not make a mark, you're going to want it to be dry. So we will take a quick pause here. Your edges and your outsides and all that stuff, they don't need to be dry. If you're taking a break here to blow dry it, if you're going to use the stencil, just kind of focus on this middle part. Make sure this middle part is really dry. Put your hair dryer or whatever you're using to dry as warm as it goes, and you can put it on as high of a level as it goes. Just hit it right here in the middle, maybe an inch or two away from your canvas for maybe 60 seconds, and it should be dry. This technique that we used in the background, it usually doesn't result in like a big thick background, so you should be, I mean, almost dry in the background. It shouldn't be too wet, but we'll take a break here, blow dry if you need to, and then we will come back. Okay, so we are dry. If you haven't taken a class with me before, the way to test if your canvas is dry is to bounce your finger up and down on the canvas. When you're testing for dryness, you don't want to wipe the canvas, because if it's not dry, you're going to smear whatever you have. That won't matter so much with this background because it's pretty textured, but if you are testing the dryness of maybe your outline or one of your flowers, you don't want to give them one of these in case it's not dry. So just some food for thought there. Right now, like I said, we are going to be freehanding our Kentucky shape. And now, of course, it's likely not going to come out as precise as the stencil. Certainly not. If you know that you want your stencil to be very realistic and very precise. Go ahead and use this. You can trace it. That's what I did over here. You're not cheating. It's a very complex shape. But if you want to go ahead and give it a try, freehanding it, we're going to go through that now. You can certainly do that. If you want to use the stencil, you can go ahead and do that now too. So like I said, what I did was I just stuck a little piece of tape on the back of my stencil here. I cut it out from the larger shape that I printed. And what I'll do is I'll just place it as close to the middle as I can, making sure this bottom is nice and straight. And so if you're tracing, what you're going to want to do is just hold whatever edge you're closest to. You're going to take one of your small brushes and dip it in black and just run your brush right along the outside here. And you're going to trace the whole outside and then just be careful picking it up. And you're just going to peel it off when you're done. And you'll have your perfect outline. And now if you're going to freehand it like me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing it with the white paint instead of the black. If you are very confident, you can go right in with the black, but if you're a little bit nervous but you want to try to do it freehand, start with your white. That way if part of the shape doesn't go exactly right, it's going to be really easy to go over with this background. It would be a little harder to cover up black, but we'll start with our white, we'll get our basic shape, and then we'll go over with the black. So I'm going to stick this up here. If you don't want to use the stencil, if you want to try to freehand it but you're a little nervous, have the stencil pulled up or just Google a picture of Kentucky. An outline is the most helpful. If you Google black outline of Kentucky or shape of Kentucky, you'll be able to find the shape. And it's nice to be able to just look at while you're doing it. Of course you can look at mine, but it might be easier to have something right next to your canvas. And so we're going to go ahead and go for this. And so I think that the easiest place to start is on the bottom. So we're going to be doing the whole shape. We're going to break it down to smaller shapes because I know it seems a little overwhelming with all the bumps and such at the top. But really what it is when you are trying to paint a complex shape, you break it down into simpler shapes. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to focus from here to here is just a straight line. Then we're going to drop it down and make this other little straight line. The bottom's pretty easy. So then from here to here is about another straight line that's a right angle with this line. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little mark up here on our canvas, and then we're going to know about how far this shape is going to come in from here, if that makes sense. Then we'll kind of figure out where our highest point is going to be, and then where our kind of lowest point over here is going to be. Then you fill in the middle, and then we have this little section here, and then big dip over here to finish off this little lower piece. I know that sounds really complicated, but the message is that basically we're just breaking it down into smaller shapes. So let's take our white, and the trickiest part is going to be probably getting it in the middle. So sometimes it helps to use your brush to kind of help decide where the middle is. Maybe it's about here. Yeah, that looks good. So we're going to start with a line that is maybe an inch off center to the right. We're going to go very lightly. This is just our straight line on the bottom. This line is maybe 6 inches across, 7 inches. Okay, so very, very light lines. We're not going very heavy-handed right now. Okay, so that's our bottom of our state. When we get to the left, we're going to drop down a 1/4 inch, very, very little bit over here. We're going to drop down, and we're going to go out 1 inch or 1.5 inches straight again. So over on this left side, we're going to drop down. We're going to come over straight across again, maybe 1 inch or 1.5 inches. Right, so there's our bottom. Look at that, we're halfway there. Alrighty. So now the right side of the state, it's going to kind of come out to a point, and then it's going to come back in. And like I said before, if you come to this spot right here, right where your straight line ends, if you draw an imaginary line up, we're going to kind of come to this little point right here. And so if you want to go ahead and take this spot and draw a little line straight up, maybe put a little marker there. You can see I put a little dot there. And so that is showing me where I want to end up, where I want my right angle to end, right? And so then I look at the state and I say, how far out is that going to come from here? And so from your bottom right line, this is probably going to come out maybe 3 inches from your bottom line. So I'm going to maybe make a little spot right here. Okay? And so it's going to be really tricky to get each of these little bumps exactly perfect, but what the little guide dots do is they make it easier to tell where you're going, because if you went around and just tried to freehand this whole thing, you would probably end up finishing over here or up here. It's hard to track the whole shape. So making these little markers makes it a little bit easier. So I say, here's my corner. I'm going to do these, the outsides of the state, and I want to end up somewhere around here, right? So this is where I'm going to make my marker. And then I'm just going to look at the contour here, and I'm going to try to match the shape as best I can. So I see at the beginning it's pretty straight, there's a little bump in. All right, so I made my outside shape. And now I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to see where it ends, maybe up here. And that's where this point is going to be. So I'm picking out important pieces to be my markers. So right now I'm going from the very right point to this high point here. And so if I look at the shape of this, this is almost straight. It's a little bit of a curve in, but then there's one big kind of little piece here, and then you're at the point. So I'm going to go ahead and try and do that. So again, it's pretty much straight, curves in a little bit, then it sticks out. We've got that one bump, and then we come straight up. Okay, now we're going to do the very same thing. So we're going to see our highest point here. This is going to be our next marker. We're going to come down and see where it hits on this straight line, because we've already drawn this straight line on our canvas. So I would say that this highest point of the state hits maybe 2/3 of the way on this line, right? So I'm going to look at my line that's already on my canvas. I'm going to come over maybe 2/3 of the way, and I'm going to see where that would end up. And I can make a little pointer there. You can see that right there. So I'm making myself guidelines along the way. And so I'm starting from here right now. I'm doing a couple of these divots. I can see that there's 1, 2, and then 3 are at the top, right? So 1 big bump, 2 little bumps. That's going to bring me from right here to right here. All right, so we're going to come here from the top. We're going to do 1 bump, 2 bumps, 3 bumps, and we're at the top of our state, right? Right there. All right, so now I'm going to go down to here, which is what I feel like is maybe my lowest point on this area here. And so again, I'm going to come on my bottom line. I'm going to see, where's my marker? It's a little bit left of center on this straight line down here. So I'm looking at my straight line here. A little bit left of center is going to be maybe right here. So I'm going to come up And I'm going to put a dot where I think that that should land. And again, you can cross-check it this way with your bottom line, or you can check it straight across with this line that we've already made, because we've already drawn over here. So if you come to your right side, I can see on this outline that this bottom part kind of lines up with our divot over here. And so just to double check myself, I'm looking at this divot over here, is right here, and it's going to come straight across and kind of meet this divot right here, right? So I want this area to almost meet up. That's how we're going to kind of check ourselves here. So if you look here, we lined it up with this line, and we lined it up with this line. So we're kind of just making a box here. We're squaring everything off, and that's how we're going to make sure our shape is accurate. Okay, so again, we're just going to look from here now to here and kind of examine that shape. And what does that look like? Again, it's just a series of little bumps. We kind of have a 1, 2, then a bigger bump, then it connects almost straight. So 1, 2, one big bump, and a little straight. I know this probably sounds complicated. If you're thanking yourself for using the stencil, try this later on a piece of paper and see if you can freehand. Once you kind of get the hang of what the marking should be like, it's not as tricky as you might think. Okay, so we're almost there. It's looking like Kentucky, right? So right now we are right here. We're almost there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to this spot right here, which is right above where our bottom first straight line ends. So that's where my next marker is going to be, is down here. And so you can see here, there's one kind of longer hump here, and then a little one and a pointy one. So that's how I'm breaking it down in these 3 sections. There's one kind of longer bump, a tiny one, and then a more pointy one. And so that bottom of our straight line here, it's a little bit lower than our point on the right side. So when I come to make my marker on my canvas, I don't want to make the dot over here higher than my point over here, because I can see on my stencil that this is lower than this point on the right. So I definitely want to make sure I'm coming lower. And so I'm going to make it maybe an inch or so above the end of my straight line on the bottom here. And again, we're going to just break this section down into simple shapes. So like I said, one bigger lump, 2 little ones. And we're going to end up meeting right up here. So I'm going to do one bigger lump, little one, and then my pointy guy. And we're going to end up there. All right, we're just about done here. Okay, so I have my little end piece now to do. So we have this line at the bottom that drops down from our main line here. And so this part is going to be one dip, a bump, and then a dip, right? So dip, bump, dip is going to be our end piece. And on the end of Kentucky, there's this kind of little, it kind of points at the end there. So make sure that end is not rounded, but make sure you can see the end there. So we're going to come up, kind of curves in, and then to the bottom. Okay, and we've about got our Kentucky there. Again, it's not going to be as perfect as the stencil, but you can tell it's Kentucky, right? And that's the goal here. So if you've been able to freehand it, congratulations. Not easy, but maybe not as difficult as you think if we break it down. So what I'll show you now is, I don't know if you can see, but on my canvas here, one of my first little dots was totally in the wrong space, and that's okay. That's why we started with white. So what I'll show you is, what I'm going to do is I'll take another clean brush, and I'm going to use my blue and my white to kind of erase that little spot in there. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my blue and my white, like we started with the background. And I'm gonna just brush it over this spot here. Same brush strokes as you did before, up, down, sideways, backwards, forwards, and it's gone, right? So you can kind of take this brush and you can almost brush anywhere in your background and it's gonna look okay. So if you did your stencil, or if you freehanded with me, worst case scenario, you freehanded with me, it didn't come out the way you wanted it to, you can take your blue and your white or whatever color you used and you can go right over it. You tried, you can use the stencil the second time if you want to. This is a very easy background to edit. So if you need to make some changes, you can pause here. You can kind of edit with your stencil a little bit if you made your point a little too tall or something like that. We can take a moment here to fix whatever we need to fix. And then we're gonna go ahead and outline. If you haven't outlined in black, you can go ahead and do that. If you started your outline in white like I did, we're gonna go ahead and really solidify this in here. If you did your initial outline in black, freehanding it, then bravo, that's very brave. So let's go ahead and we'll just trace here. We've already done the work. We're just showing off what we've already been able to do here. And if anybody is in an area of Kentucky right now that's on one of these borders and I just completely messed up where your town or your city goes, I apologize. When I was freehanding, if I've left anybody out. And now I know if this is your first time freehanding a pretty complex shape like that, the description might have been a little complicated. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. I will try to explain, and we will go from there. And so we're gonna just let this air dry. No need to blow dry it right now. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna start working on our flowers. And I'm gonna show you how to do a couple different types of flowers. And as always, feel free to customize the colors, the types of flowers. If you only wanted to do, say, this type of flower, if you wanted to just cover your canvas in that type of flower in all different colors, then you can certainly do that. You don't have to do every type of flower. They don't need to be arranged like mine are. This part is going to be your part. And so I'm going to show you how to do them, but the arrangements, the colors, the sizes, if you want to do a different type of flower, if you know how to do a type of flower, totally up to you. I'm going to try to do some different, we'll say some different colors with my flowers over on this canvas, just to give us a little something new here. So I am going to start with this type of flower here, this little purple and white guy. And I think this time, I think I'm going to do them pink and white. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mix up a little pink. It's just going to be some red and some white. And so what I like to do with something like this that has a lot of colors in it is to reuse a lot of my colors. And so I'll kind of show you later on. You'll be able to see what I mean. But so I'm mixing this this pink here. I'm going to use that for my flowers here. But if you look, there's only maybe 5 or so flowers that are this color. So I'm probably not going to use up all of this paint that I'm mixing with just that one type of flower. And so what we don't want to do is end up with a bunch of full pots of color that we haven't used at the end, because I don't like to waste paint. So what I'll probably do is I can take this pink, I'm going to use it to make my flowers here, and then the next type of flower I do, I can mix some blue into this and make it a purple. Or I can mix some yellow into it and make it an orange. So I'm going to use my colors in multiple flowers in different arrangements, different types of flowers. You're not even going to be able to tell it came from the same little pot of paint. The color is going to change drastically. But what I like to do is use the colors that I already have to inform my other colors. Again, if you're using only one specific color, like if you want to do all of your flowers purple, you're going to do all the different types, but you want them all to be yellow, or you want them all to be red, or all to be white, then that's a different story. But if you're going for kind of what I did, where it's almost all the colors, and then try to use the colors that you have to inform other colors. And like I said, I'll show you how to do that when we get there. All right, so for this specific type of flower here, I'm going to use, this brush is about an inch wide. And again, this is all on my, I'm using a 16 by 20 canvas. So if you're using a smaller canvas, you probably want to use maybe a 1/2 inch brush, but the brush stroke will be the same. All right, we're going to dry really well. And so what we're going to do for this specific type of flower is we're going to put 2 colors on the brush, but we're going to be a little bit more specific about where we put the colors than we were when we did the background. So we're going to take our brush and we're going to dip 1/2 of it in pink and 1/2 of it in white. Doesn't quite look like half, but we're going to try to get 1/2 and 1/2 here. And so for this type of flower, what I did was I wanted the color to be in the middle of the flower. So the deepest part of the color is in the middle. The white is kind of the edge of the flower. And so what you want to do is you want to decide where you want the center of your flower to be. Maybe I'll do one right here for you. And so you're going to put your paintbrush down, and this corner of your brush that has the color is not going to move. You're going to kind of twist your brush around like this so that the corner with the color, if you watch my brush, is always staying in the middle. You're going to kind of roll it in your fingers, but we're going to do one petal at a time. So again, we're going to stick the paintbrush down where we want the center of the flower to be, and we're going to lift it up and come back in. All right, so that's one petal. We're going to put the paintbrush color side to the center of the flower. We're going to go give them a little up down, and there's our petal. So again, starting in the center, up down to the center, up down, up down. There is our one flower. We got one down. All right, and like I said, you can do this in a variety of colors if you want, a variety of sizes. You can do big flowers, small flowers. You don't even have to do whole flowers if you want. If you want to stick, you know, one little kind of piece of a flower in here, like in a little corner, you can certainly do that. You just don't go all the way around with your petals. You want to do a little half flower over here. Because what I like to do with this painting, I think it always looks better when you kind of crowd the state a little bit. You want them to be nice and tight around your outline here. So you can see here I did some little half flowers. And when we get towards the end, what we're kind of doing here is we're doing bigger flowers first, and as we go, we're gonna fill in with those smaller flowers. So our big flowers right now, there's nothing in their way, we're gonna put them where we wanna put them, and then we're gonna fill in with our little guys and our foliage, our green, our little leaves and our stems later on. So you're gonna be able to use these small flowers to kind of fill in all these little nooks and crannies here. But if you wanna kind of start strategically placing your bigger flowers, you can definitely do that. And they don't all have to be big. We can do a little one like this, right over here. Okay, a little bit of a smaller one. Let's see, they don't have to be whole flowers either. I guess we could do a little, just do one little petal here and there. Almost more like a bud, I guess, than a whole flower. And I'm using the same brush stroke. The color part of your brush always stays towards the center. All right, maybe I'll do one more of these. I'll come out here. Now, if you love this type of flower, if you did it and it looks beautiful, if you want to do this type of flower in all different colors, you can absolutely do that. If you want to leave a little room for a different type of flower, you can do that too. If you do these and then you realize you have too much space left over at the end, you can always come back to this type of flower. This part that we're doing right now is pretty loose, right? So there we go. We have a little bit of our space taken up here. All right, so I'm gonna rinse that brush. Gonna dry it off. If you're still on that type of flower, that's fine. I'm gonna be going through the types of flowers maybe a little bit quickly, just so I can show you each type. And so then if you want to spend your time kind of deciding where each flower should go and how to fill your space up right, you can certainly do that. You don't need to fill the space as fast as we're going. We just want to at least kind of see the basics as we're going, right? And so we're going to move on to our next biggest flower. It's probably going to be the red rose here. So let's see. Do I want to do red roses again? I guess I could. They'll go with the pink that I have. Red roses always remind me of Derby. We're just past Derby season here, so we'll go ahead and we'll do these. So I'm going to take the same brush that I had before. This is it's maybe 1 inch, 3/4 inch brush. Again, that's for a 16 by 20 canvas. So if you have a smaller one, you can certainly size down. Or if you don't have one this size, anything around this size is okay. The thing that I'm going to say for this type of flower and the flower that I just did is you probably want a flat brush. Flat as in, what I'm saying here when I mean flat is that you can turn it and it's narrow, so it's much wider one way. So if you look at this brush, no matter how I turn it, it is round if I put it this way. Ooh, there we go. So you can see this one's very flat, this one's round no matter how I turn it. So if you have a brush that looks like this, but the top is round instead of straight across, that's okay, you can still use that one. You just want it to be flat this way, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to do our roses. The roses are a little bit of a two-step here. So what we're going to do is we're going to decide where we want our roses to go, and we're going to paint that just red and then we're going to go over top of it with our second color, or red, or whatever color you decide. So let's see, I'm going to decide where I want to put my roses. Again, I have my maybe 3/4 inch brush here. I'm going to just start placing these. And what you want to do is you're going to make an oval with kind of irregular edges here. So I know it doesn't look like much right now, but we're just kind of making little blobs. And your flowers can certainly overlap each other. I'm going to come up here and I'll come over top of that one a little bit. You can have two right next to each other. Maybe I'll stick one up here. Just making kind of little, almost like little clouds here. Do one over here. And then I can do the same thing that I did with my the other flowers here. If you just want to make little buds, you don't need to make the whole flower every time. Okay. So we have our base here. We're going to rinse. We're going to use the same brush, so we're going to rinse, we're going to dry really well. Gotta get a new rag. Okay, we're going to dry really well. If this is your first class, and if you have paintbrushes like this that have this kind of metal at the top, you definitely want to dry it brush side down. If you dry it brush side up, sometimes water gets trapped in there. Then you go and dip in your paint and you go to paint on your canvas and all the water runs out and it ruins your painting. So if this is your first time, try to dry your brushes brush head side down. Okay, so we have our little, I'll call them outlines. We have our little outlines here. And now you can do this in a variety of colors. You can do white like I did over here. You could do a little bit of black. I'm going to say if you use the black, go sparingly, because the black can dominate a color like the red, especially if it's next to these white flowers. It can look really heavy. So if you're going to use the black, if you're going to use it in kind of all of your flowers, then we can do that. Or if your flowers are all kind of darker colors, dark purples, dark greens, dark blues, then you can kind of carry the black. Mine are a little bit of lighter colors, so I'm going to use white for my secondary color on these roses. But I mean, you could use a pink, you could use a dark purple, you could use a deeper tone of red if you have a deeper red. We just need one color that is different. Okay? So what we're going to do is, if you kind of picture the way that the top of the rose looks, you know that all the little petals kind of fold into each other. And so what I think of when I'm doing this type of flower is, I think of if I'm looking at the head of the flower here, you're going to make your center like you're kind of tracing the tops of those leaves. And so what I'm going to do is I just dipped in a little bit of my white. And my white has a little bit of pink in there, but actually that's fine. So I'm going to, let's see, I'll start up here. I'm going to start in my center with a little kind of C shape, right? And so then on the outside of that C shape, I'm going to make another C shape. And then on the outside of that C shape, I'm going to make another C shape. And I'm just kind of tracing around and making the circle a little bit bigger each time. So let's see, I'm going to come here and I'm going to come around the C that I already made. And I'm going to come here on the outside and come around this other one that I already made. So you're just kind of filling them in here. Right? around the center. All of your petals are going to be, going circular out from the middle. If that makes sense. I'm going to start at the middle here. And just keep going in circles, little half circles, I guess, till I reach the outsides. And so if you have these little half pieces, you can kind of come on that top edge, just give them a little something. These flowers are very stylized, so you don't have to worry about being super, super precise or super, super realistic. The purpose of the flowers is just to kind of fill the space in this background. And you'll find that when you're done, when you have all of your flowers in place, you're not even going to be able to pick out one particular flower. Say you have one particular flower that you kind of don't like that much. You're going to notice it now while you're doing the flowers, but once you have them all in here, you're not going to be looking at that one little flower that you're like, ooh, I don't like the way that one petal turned out, I promise. So if you feel like you need to make a big change, like, ooh, I don't like that flower, I need to get rid of it, I would say wait, do the rest of your flowers, and then kind of see how you feel about if you have one in particular. Okay? So like I said, we're building our bigger flowers first, then we're going to fill in with our little guys. So what we're going to do next is we'll do kind of our, what are those, daisies? I'm really bad at flowers. For someone who paints flowers so much, I just don't know the names of any flowers. We're going to do these. Yellow center, white petals. Someone tell me what these are called. I know roses. That's about it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use my same brush again. I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to mix some white into my yellow. And so I'm not going to mix enough to change the color. We still want it to be a nice bright yellow, but I would say take the yellow out of your bottle and mix it with white where it's going to be maybe 90% yellow, 10% white. So you'll see the color doesn't get really any lighter. It still looks like the yellow that came out of the bottle or the tube, but that addition of white is going to make it less transparent. If we put the yellow from like straight out of the bottle onto the canvas, usually it's very see-through. And you don't want to have to do multiple layers just to get a little center of a flower, right? So we're gonna put a little white into it just to give it more heft, I guess. And so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna use the yellow first, but we're not gonna paint the whole center of the flower. We're just gonna put just a little dot where we want our flowers to go. So again, we're doing kind of placement first. Then we're going to do the petals, and then we're going to put in the big yellow center. Because what happens if you do the center first is sometimes you kind of, you want the petals to attach to the center of the flower, but if the center of the flower is wet, then you're going to end up pulling that yellow out, and we don't want that. We want these petals to stay nice and bright white. So all we're gonna do for now, say I wanna put one big one here, I'm just gonna put one little dot wherever I wanna put these. We'll do one here, we'll do one here, do one here. And again, they can be pretty close to your other ones if you want. They're probably going to overlap. These are pretty big. You can do a little, maybe a little half one in here. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh, that's a lot. Okay. All right, so we can either use the same brush or, let's see. We can either use the same brush or we can size down to a smaller brush. The shape doesn't really matter too much. Since that brush had red and yellow in it, I'm going to change my brush just to make sure that the white that we get is like super crisp white. So if you need to change your brush, if your paint water's very dirty at this point, like mine is, then go ahead and change your brush. Or if you want to run to the sink and rinse it really well, you can do that. We can pause the video right now because we're not live. One benefit that came out of the pandemic here is being able to do these classes at your own pace. So we'll be thankful for that. Okay, so I have sized down. I have just a little round brush. If you didn't size down, let's see. I don't have a brush that's quite as big as the one that I had before, but if this was my brush that I had before, that may be 3/4 inch brush. If you want to still use this one, you certainly can. You just are going to use the thin side instead of the wide side. So when you're making your petals, you're going to brush on them this way instead of this way. So your brush is going to be straight up and down, thin side to the canvas, instead of like this, where you're going to make a wide brush stroke. Okay, we want thin brush stroke for this part. Or if you have a round brush like this, that works too. Okay, and so you'll see here, I think that the most important thing about this flower is not necessarily the shape of each of the petals, but the shape of the flower as a whole. If you look at these, what we can do is we can do some that are kind of facing up. If you look here, there's no petals on the back side of this one. It's just the center of the flower, and then the petals are kind of coming off the sides and down in the front, like you're looking at it kind of like straight, or from the side, I'll say. And then we have other ones like this that are going to be, you're looking at the flower like this. You're looking at the face of the flower and you see all the petals all the way around. And so what I'll say is that even when you're doing this view of the flower, you kind of want the flower to be wider than it is tall. So if you look at these examples, the edges, the edge petals are longer, and maybe the ones in the front are longer than the ones up here at the top. These are going to be little short kind of brush strokes, and these guys are going to be longer. And the reason for that is that without being too precise, having the flower have a distinct shape rather than if you just drew a flower on a piece of paper. If someone gave you a pencil and said, here, draw a flower, a lot of us would put the spot in the middle and then go around the outside, right? So it's even on all sides. And so that makes kind of this round flower that looks like a sticker. It's very flat, and that looks even a little less realistic, I'll say, than what we're doing here. Not that these look very realistic, but having these flowers purposefully be a little bit wider than they are tall gives them a little bit of perspective, because we are creating dimension in here. The flowers might not be realism, but they have volume. From using two colors in each flower, from doing this kind of gradient with our pink and our white and our purple and our white, by giving them centers and layers and putting them all on top of each other, we're filling the space, not just this way on a flat plane, but we're filling the space with depth. And so having these flowers have a purposeful shape gives them a little bit more of that depth. Whereas if you did a flower that was all, I'll say all round, it kind of flattens it a little bit. And so we're gonna kind of keep that in mind as we're going forward. The top petals are gonna be a little shorter than our side petals and our bottom petals, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's start. I'll start down here at the bottom. And so what I like to do for this type of petal is I like to go kind of in two brush strokes. And I imagine that I'm making a very, very elongated, almost like eye shape. So I'm going to start at the center. I'm going to come out. I'm going to kind of curve. And I'm going to come out on the other side and also kind of curve. That makes sense. So I'm going to come out and out. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. These are pretty fast. 1, 2. All right. So now we're coming up to the top. Same brush stroke, or 1, 2s, except they're going to get shorter. All right. So we don't really have our center in there quite yet, but we're going to do that after. All right. We'll come to our other one. Maybe we'll do one of the side view ones here. So we're not going to put any petals on the top of this one. We're going to do the same brush stroke, our 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, got a little yellow in there. It's okay. Okay, then the center goes right there. We'll do that after. All right, this one's gonna kind of hug the edge right here. We're gonna overlap our rows a little bit, that's fine. These flowers are very full. One, two, 1, 2. And now I would say that the most important part is not for your flowers to look like mine, but it is for your flowers to look consistent on your canvas. So as long as your flowers all look the same, that's the important part. If you're doing your petals on your flowers and they come out a little different than mine come, that's perfectly fine. As long as they look, as long as you have found a method where you can make all of yours at least look similar. Okay, oh, I did a lot of these. Let's see, got one over here. There we go, shorter on the top. A little bit wider on the edges. you overlap your Kentucky a little bit, that's fine. If you want to kind of try to tuck the flower behind your Kentucky, that's fine too. What you can also do at the end is, if you've overlapped your state a little bit like this, you can go back over with your black outline at the end, and you won't even notice, instead of trying to kind of tuck behind, which is a little hard. If you need to kind of reinforce that outline at the end, that's a-okay. We've got our flowers. All right. So if you have switched to this smaller size brush, then we're going to rinse this and we're going to use this one again. If you're still using your bigger flat brush, then we're going to want to switch to one that is smaller. If you have a rounded brush, that's going to be better for this next one, but not necessary. We can always just turn it on its side like we did last time. So if you have a round one like this, or let's see. Okay, so any type of, I'll say medium-ish round brush will work for this next part. If you only have a flat brush, so if you look, well, this one's a little frayed, but it's supposed to be flat like this. See, it's wider on this side, it's flat like this. If you only have a flat brush, that's okay. We're just going to use it on the skinny side again. So like we kind of did last time, if you used your flat brush, you're just going to be painting on the thin side of the brush, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to use this one, and I'll show you how to do it with this one. All right, so we're kind of sizing down now. So these are kind of our main bigger flowers here. And so now we're going to go ahead and get a little smaller. And so I've done a lot of pink and white and red here. I haven't gotten a lot of other colors. So I'm going to go ahead and use some of my purple for this one. Also keep in mind that if your color scheme looks a little plain right now and you haven't used a lot of other colors, keep in mind that you have the blue in the background, so it might be a little tricky to do a blue flower without it kind of fading back. Also keep in mind that we are going to do a lot of green, and my canvas over here looked really plain until I put all of the little stems and leaves and little dots and green accents in here. So it might look a little flat until we kind of get to that part where it really starts to like fluff it up. So be patient with yourself if you're like, not there yet, but we'll get there, I promise. Okay. And so this is the type of flower that I always get carried away with. I love doing these because they're pretty easy and they're a lot of fun. So I'm going to take my smaller round brush, or if you have the flat brush, you're going to take your flat brush, and I'm going to put two colors on it. So this time I'm going to use my purple and my white, and if you look, I'm using this white from the center that's got all red in it, so I actually have a little pink on there, but that's going to be fine. The more colors you add, the more dimension it has, so if you've kind of got just like a mix of colors on there, that's okay. And so this next type of flower, I'll say, gives the painting a lot of movement, because right now it looks very like static. So we're going to be painting kind of this type of flower here that you see over here. They're really light orange on my canvas over here, so it's kind of hard to see. But this is going to kind of bring all of the stuff that we're doing here outward a little bit. And so it might look like you're sticking these a little too far out, but really you can take up all this room out here, okay? And so what we're going to do is, it almost ends up looking kind of like a braid if you've ever braided hair. We're going to start from the outside and pull into the center. So if you look at my finger here as the center line, we're going to start on the outside and pull into center. Start on the outside, pull into center. Out, in, out, in. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So I'm going to start with one right up here. And so again, we'll start at the top. So I'm going to do one just little line. And then, like I said, we're going to start from the outside and pull into the center. From the outside, a little curve into the center. In, 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 in. From each side here. Okay. Again, don't ask me what type of flower this is. I am not sure, but it's very decorative, and it gives, like I said, the piece a lot of volume, a lot of movement, because you want these pieces to be curved. I always like to give them a little bit of direction. If they're straight, they look a little flat. So what you can do, if you need to, is turn your canvas, and if you want to curve it this way, they're a little hard to do upside down, so you can curve your canvas to kind of work with you, right? Don't work for your canvas, make it work for you. So then when I come upside down, it's kind of going the right way there. All right, let's see, I'll come over here maybe. I'll curve this one up. I'm going to start at the center, come from the outside in, outside in. I'm going to do one over here. And you can do big ones, you can do little ones. You can do short ones with just one or two, like if you need to fill in a space here. If I wanted to do a small one like that, you can do little small ones. They don't have to be super big. Maybe I'll do one here. And this is going to be the part where your flowers start to overlap, okay? And that is okay. That's kind of what we want here. You want it to be a nice full space, if you can. You want it to look lush, to look lively. Like I said, these are always the ones I get carried away with. I love the way that these look, so I'm going to try to restrain myself here. Okay. So we're getting there, right? The space is kind of filling up here. Okay. I'm going to continue to use the smaller size brush. As we go, we're getting smaller and smaller with our flowers. We're gonna still come back to these white ones to do those centers. But what I'm gonna do now is I think I'm going to do, we're moving on to our small little flowers here. These kind of, I'll say classic, what you think of when, you know, someone says, here, draw a flower. It's the kind of 5-petal, very easy, standard looking flower here. And I think I want to do maybe some orange ones. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to borrow from the palette that I already have. I have a lot of yellow. It's not going to take that much to do the centers of those flowers. So I'm going to take some of my yellow and some of my pink that I had, and I'm going to mix them together and make it's going to make kind of a light orange. So maybe my small flowers will be orange. I'm trying to think what colors we don't have. We have red. We're doing orange. If you want to do some yellow flowers, you can certainly do yellow flowers. But again, I would use that yellow that we added some white to, just so they're not transparent. We're going to do green at the end. Blue might be tricky if your background is blue. If you want to do a very, very dark blue flower, that might look nice. If your background is light like mine, this background's a little bit dark. I don't know that I could do a blue flower on this background that would show up, but if your background is light like this, or if it's a different color, you could certainly use blue. And then we have some purple ones. So we've got each color kind of in the works here. So you can see here from these two colors, I've mixed up this kind of, it's almost like a creamsicle orange. And so these guys I'm calling my fillers. They're very easy. It's exactly what you think it is. You're gonna put your paintbrush down. It's almost gonna be kind of like the brush stroke that we did for these white flowers. I'm gonna kind of put it down and curve it. Oops. I'm gonna put it down and kind of do a 1-2 stroke where you're gonna go out a little bit and out a little bit. But they're very small, so it's gonna be a quick 1-2, 1-2. And I'll show you here. This brush might even be a little bit too big for this, but we'll see, we'll try. So let me do one in here. So 1, 2, 1, 2. One, two, right? So very simple, very small. We're again just kind of making those almost like football shapes for this last little flower, and these are our fillers. We're going to come right up next to our state. Anywhere where we don't have flowers, we're going to tuck these guys in. And these guys can be big, they can be small, they can be incomplete, they don't have to be a whole flower. You could do, let's see, you have like a little space here. You could do a little half flower. You could do a little kind of bud thing in here. This is the part where we are filling space. Now my only recommendation for these flowers, this type of flower, is that you do more than 4 petals. If you only do 4 petals on this type of flower, it ends up looking a little like a butterfly. If you want to put butterflies in here, you certainly can do that. It's kind of this brush stroke where you're going to do 1, 2 on each side. You know, 1, 2, 1, 2. But if you do 5 petals or 6 petals, it looks a little more flower-like and a little less bug-like. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these. Let's see. So it kind of helps to take a look back here and see where you, not where you're missing something, but any area that's not quite as full. And just fill it in those areas. I am liking it so far. I think that's looking good. And then if I want to, what I can do is, I still have some yellow in here, and that's about the only color that I'm missing at this point. So if I want to do that same flower shape, I can do that. I'll just do some yellow ones instead of some orange ones. If you want to do some red ones, some purple ones, some pink ones, again, just to kind of fill in some space, I can certainly do that. So I'll take some of my yellow. I'm going to do the same little brush stroke in here. Give them a little 1, 2, 1, two, 1, 2. Wow, look at that yellow. And they don't all have to be identical. You can make some little teeny tiny ones. You can make some bigger ones. You could do 2 right next to each other. You could even do one kind of, you know, hanging way out. Like I could do one out here. One little one. Because what you don't really want is for all your flowers to be too close and look like they're just, you know, they're just attached to your state. You want them, that was the purpose of these purple ones, is to kind of give you a little break out into the rest of the canvas. So if you want to, you know, stick one way out here, that's fine too. Beautiful. Okay, so while we have this yellow on our brush, if you have this yellow on your brush, then we can go ahead and fill in the centers of those white flowers that we did. If you don't have the yellow on your brush, or if you are using a different color, just grab a small brush of any kind. It doesn't really matter what size it is, because we're basically just going to be making a little, it's almost like a little egg yolk center in the middle of these white flowers. So it's going to be for the flat, there we go. So for the flat facing flowers, so the ones that you have petals all the way around, we're going to take our yellow and we're going to make kind of a little oval. Again, wider than it is tall. So we're going to make an oval. Okay, there we go. Let's see, up here. And up here, little oval. And then for our half flowers, you're gonna make, it's almost like a half circle. So at the top, where there are no petals, you're gonna make the top a little bit more rounded, and then the bottom is gonna be more straight across. So over here, top's a little more rounded, bottom is more straight across than our other ones. This one's going to go the other way. It's going to be straight on the top and round on the bottom because that one's kind of upside down. All right, so we're getting there. All right, and so we do have to put centers on some of these flowers. If you look over here, some of them just have little spots. These yellow ones have little specks. These purple ones actually have centers, but it's hard to see because they're a little bit dark. But that's going to be our very last step here. The next thing that I want to do is move on to our green, onto our foliage here, I guess. And now you can mix your green from yellow and blue. If you're going to mix a green, I would use, if you have the 2 different blues, if you have ultramarine and the phthalo blue, or phthalo blue, I would use the phthalo or phthalo blue. It's a little bit more of a, like a natural looking blue. If you have a green in your, if you got a green in your kind of primaries kit, you can certainly use that. If you have a more grassy green, that's nice, but the green that came with my kit is like a phthalo green, and it looks super unnatural. Like, it is very blue. It's almost more of like a teal color, and that's not really what we want for our purposes. So if you have this kind of green and it doesn't look the way that you want it to look, not a problem. We can always, we'll edit it here. And so for this part, I'm going to use a pretty skinny I mean, this is not a good looking brush, but let me get a smaller brush here. I'm going to use a pretty small brush because we're going to be doing some little leaves. It can be a round one, a flat one, whatever you've got. So to kind of help my phthalo green out, like I said, it's a little too blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some yellow into it, and that's going to make it a little bit more of a natural color. It's going to make it more of a grassy green, less of a blue green. Another thing that you can do to your green to make it more natural looking is if you have a green, sometimes you get the green in the tube that is like almost neon color. It's like very bright green. It doesn't look natural at all. What you can always do to a color to mellow it out, I'll say, is add a little bit of the color that's opposite that color on the color wheel. So if you are unfamiliar, if you Google a color wheel, it'll show you, what is it, 6 colors, 5 colors? I can't think of it off the top of my head now. But each color has an opposite. Green is opposite of red. Your blue and your orange and your yellow and your purple, so I guess it's 6, are opposite each other's. So if you have a green that looks like this, that is very bright, that doesn't look like a leafy green at all, what you can do is I'll take just a speck, like a very little bit of my purple, and I'll mix it into the green. And so if you think about what that would do if you did a lot, if I put a bunch of that purple in this green, it would turn brown. The same thing with if you did green and red, or purple and orange. If you put opposites together, they'll kind of turn brown. But if you do it in very small ratios, what it does is it stands to neutralize the color a little bit. And actually, I do have red. I thought I didn't have any before. So if I have my green and it's looking a little too fake green, put a little red into it, and it will mellow it out. So if you look at what I have now, as opposed to what I had before, this is a little bit more of it's kind of like a foresty green. Maybe a little like olivey green. So that was a long-winded way to say, if your color's too bright, instead of adding black, add your opposite color on the color wheel. And you can look, you don't have to memorize those colors. Obviously I haven't. You can look them up, Google the color wheel. Whatever's opposite of that color on the color wheel will mellow out the color a ton. I think a lot of people's inclination to make a color darker or less bright is to put black in it, because that's usually what you would do to make a color brighter, is you would put white into it. So they think, well, to make a color darker, you're going to put black into it. That doesn't always work, especially depending on the quality of paint that you're using. If you're using like a student level or even a craft level paint, which isn't bad paint, that's the paint that I use, the black isn't always a true black. It usually will just turn your colors gray. The lower level quality that your paint is, the less pigment it has in it. So when you add black to your color, don't think of it like you're adding black, kind of think of it like you're adding a gray or even like a very dark blue. Like I know that my black is very blue leaning. So when I put it in my colors, it almost is like you're adding a little bit of blue to it instead of the black. So unless you have like very, very high level, professional level paints, which for this purpose, you don't need those. I don't recommend it. They're very expensive, especially if you're gonna have leftovers like this. The black paint probably isn't gonna do what you want it to do. So try that little opposites thing, see if it works for you. It's worked for me so far. So we're gonna go ahead and use our green to, again, we're gonna fill in the space, we're gonna add little stems and things like that. Because our flowers are so tight together, you're not necessarily going to be putting a stem on each of the flowers. The green is gonna kind of, again, just fill spaces. You're gonna add little shoots and little leaves and stuff here and there just to add some volume to what we're doing here. And so to give the green a little more depth, what you can do is you can use your green in conjunction with another color, kind of like we've been doing with the other parts. So the flowers that have the most volume on here are the ones that we've used two colors with. So here, our purple and our white, our red and our white, our orange and our yellow. They have the most dimension. So if you want a little more dimension in your green, you can always do the thing where you dip into two colors. You can dip into your green and your yellow at the same time. You can dip into your green and your white at the same time. Even dipping into your green and your blue at the same time would be nice. So if you feel like you need some variety, go ahead and do that. Let's see. So the first thing that we can do is we can start with some leaves. If you have any bigger gaps that you feel like you need to fill in, you can certainly do that with some leaves. There's kind of two ways to make leaves. You can do the classic kind of football shaped leaf, like that, right? Oh, that wasn't a great one, that's okay. Or you can kind of replicate what we did with this purple flower, where you can make a leaf that has some points on it. Let me turn upside down and make one over here. So you're going to start at the top, and you're going to kind of pull from each side. All right, so you can make a leaf like that. So there's a few different ways to make your leaves. There's no right or wrong here. There's no right or wrong place to put them. Wherever you feel like you need them. Again, they don't need to attach to a particular flower. They can just kind of be hanging out in between. Put some in the middle. You can do them in clusters. You can have like little two leaves together. All right, we've got our little splashes of green here and there. Another thing that I like to do with this green is to make little, I don't want to say stems because they're not going to be attached to any flowers, but little, almost like little blades of grass here and there. Little shoots, I guess. Because again, I feel like it kind of breaks the edges. If you've made a loop of flowers that looks very tight around your state, it's very circular, these little shoots kind of stand to break that little edge. And so what I like to do is I'll start kind of in a condensed area here. I'm going to put my brush down and just kind of drag it out. Try not to drag it out straight. Try to give it a little, either a curve to the left or a curve to the right. You can do little ones, you can do big ones, you can do none. Okay. So our third thing that we can do, if you have any flowers that do look like they have, I'll say bottoms to them. So I'm looking at this guy right here, this little half orange flower. So I kind of have a similar thing here with my little pink flowers. If you want to come underneath this and give it 2 little brush strokes so it looks like it has a little stem, you can do that for these little guys. You can also do that for your purple flowers if you want them to look like they have a little stem. So let me come up on this purple one here. So if you give it like a little kind of V shape at the bottom, that kind of gives those guys a little stem. Again, they don't need them, but if you feel like you're wanting to fill your space a little bit more, you want to give some of your little guys stems or a little greenery, you can do that. Okay. So aside from our centers, wow, look how lush that's looking. So aside from our centers, I have one more little detail that I have on here. If you want to really pack this middle part here, or if you feel like it's too packed and your outside is less of an irregular edge. So if you look at mine, I have this sticking up here, I have these kind of coming out here, I have the purple sticking out, I have this white one that's kind of sticking out. If yours looks just more like an even circle and you need some things to kind of break that circle, what I do is I took some of my colors and I just made little clusters of spots. So if you look on here, you kind of can't tell when you just look at the whole thing as a whole, but if you see in here, I have some little, I have like a 1, 2, 3, some pink spots. I have little clusters of these little green spots, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And again, they just kind of take up space. They serve to balance areas that need some more balance. So if you have a space anywhere, and it's not a big enough space to put a flower in, but you feel like you need something, try just throwing a couple little spots in there. And I'm going to do some in green, and I'll do some in different colors. You can do some pinks, you can do some purples, some oranges, some yellows, whatever you need. And you can do these on the inside, you can do them towards the outside of your flower garden here, wherever you need them. And they just add a little something. And you might say, well, what are those supposed to be? I don't know, right? They're just they're just little details. If you feel like you're almost there, but it needs something else, that might be it. All right, so I've got some green ones. I'm gonna do some pink ones too. Let's see. There's no right or wrong place to put these. They don't need to be in threes either. You can give them a little 1, 2 in there. Whatever your canvas looks like it needs. Beautiful. Okay. So, centers. Now, if you love the way that your flowers turned out and you don't feel like you need centers on any of these flowers, you definitely don't need them. We put centers on the flowers that were important. If you did these white flowers, those definitely need something in the middle. What I mean when I'm saying centers for the other flowers is mainly our little ones, these little kind of 5-petal guys that we did last, or these bigger the ones that we started with, the pink and white ones here. You can put centers on them if you want. If you don't want to touch them, if you're worried you're gonna ruin them or something, then you don't need to. I kind of did my centers in two different ways. So for my pink flowers, which are pink over here but purple over here, this type of flower, you can't really see in the middle, but I did almost kind of the same brush stroke that I did for my little grass pieces. I have the center of these, I just kind of take from the middle and flick it out towards the outside. Over there, since those flowers were so dark, I did it in black, but since these flowers are lighter, I'm going to do these in red. So kind of choose whatever color you feel like goes with your painting. Okay. And then for these little guys, again, you can choose whatever color you feel like goes with the color of the flowers that you made. But for my little flowers here, I kind of mimic the same thing that I did with these little dots here and there. And I just made the centers of these little clusters of dots. So if you look at these little yellow flowers that I have here, I just put a little 1, 2, 3 dot on the center of each of them, and that's the center that I made. So since my flowers here are orange, maybe I'll do a purple center. We'll do a little bit of an opposites thing. So on my orange flowers, very simple in the middle, I'm going to do just 1, 2, 3 little dots. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. Easy, easy center. All right, same thing for my, I have a couple yellow ones, I'll do the same. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And this isn't too precise, you could do more than 3 if you want to do like a group of little dots in the center like that. Do that. All right. Now my very last one here, what I did over here was on my white flowers with my yellow centers, I put a little bit of black spotting around the center of these flowers. And I did that because I felt like the black on the outline and the writing in here was a little bit too dark, and it didn't tie in anywhere to the flowers that were on the outside. So I did my little black spots on the outsides of these white and yellow flowers because I felt like it brought together the writing and the state shape. So if you feel like what you did out here and what you're doing in here is a little disconnected, you can do the same thing. If you wanted to make the centers of your little flowers black, you can do that. I would just say go small. But if you want to do what I did with these white and yellow flowers, you're going to take the same brush and you're going to take just a tiny bit of your black, a little tiny bit. And you're going to do just similar to what we did to the tiny flowers. And you're just going to make a series of little tiny dots just around the edges of these flowers. And so you're going to be kind of half on the center and half on the petals here. Just a little cluster. Here and there. Just to define the middle a little bit and to bring some of that darkness of the black into the flower area. If you feel like all of your flowers are pretty light, if you've used like a pastel color palette, and you feel like this black might be overwhelming, then you certainly can leave it out. Okay, here we go. And so last step of this part, like I said, if you anywhere on your canvas have kind of overlapped your state with a flower petal or anything and you want to fix that, you can go ahead and kind of redefine that outline if you need it. You might not. Okay. So there we have it. We have our flowers, we have our state shape, not as hard as we thought, right? And so the very last part that we're going to do is going to be super personal. You can put whatever you want to put in the middle of the state. If you love the way that it looks right now, you can leave it completely blank. You don't need to put anything in there. What some people do is you can find wherever it is that you live on the map, and you can put a little star there, you can put a heart there. I kind of did that over here. You can see I have like a little tiny star right there where I live. So if you want to kind of mark your location, you can do that. Looks so nice. Some people write my old Kentucky home. You can write Kentucky Strong if you love that phrase. You can write home, you can write your address, you can write your last name, you know, the Allens, the Smiths, whatever you have to write in here, whatever you feel like you want your little Kentucky to say, you can write that. Some people do coordinates. I love the way that some people write like the GPS coordinates. I think that looks really nice too. You can do that. And so what you can do, if you, again, are nervous and don't want to mess up this middle part after you've just done all this nice work, is if you used your stencil, you can take your stencil and either your paintbrush or a pencil or a pen or something, and you can write on your stencil whatever it is that you want to write in here. You can kind of practice on here, right? So you can see how the words fit in here. If you want to do something longer, like my old Kentucky home, you can do the my up here, old Kentucky home. You know, you can kind of use this as like your planning phase before you go to write there. So let me take my brush here. Let's see. Let me do I'm going to do an I Heart KY, I guess. I'm going to get sentimental on you all. So I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to kind of curve mine up. So I'm going to do I Heart KY, right? And I find when you're doing writing, if you're nervous about doing the writing, you can do the thing again like we did before, where you can start with white paint. That way, if you mess something up, you can always brush back over it with your white and your blue. Again, this background's super forgiving, so if you want to start that way, you can start that way. No pressure. I find that the easiest way to do writing is just to go for it. Write it at the same speed that you would write something on a piece of paper. I find where a lot of people mess up is that when they concentrate too hard on painting letters, they go really slowly, and that somehow messes everybody up, because then you end up with some small letters, some big letters. They start big and they get smaller. They start in one direction, they curve up towards another direction because we're taking too long and we're kind of focusing too hard on it. So I find that if you just go at your normal speed, like you're writing with a pen, and it's a lot easier. It, you know, comes out the right size most of the time, the right shape in your specific handwriting. It's a lot easier. So don't psych yourself out. It's not that big a deal. We can always start back over. So I'm going to do an heart, KY. And so you'll see the first time I did it, it was kind of sketchy. It's, not super heavy because I was going fast, right? I wanted to get all of my information in there. Then I can go back and I can kind of solidify my lines. And give it a little shine in there. My heart. Okay. I'll give it a little twist at the end, be a little fancy. KY. Okay, if anyone has ever taken art classes, if you've taken like typography or anything like that, if you want your letters to look fancy, if you add little, I think you'll see easier on this one. So I did some fancy letters here. And if you look at the kind of edges of these letters, these little kind of hooks that hang off the ends, they're called serifs. So if you add little serifs to the ends of your letters, it looks more fancy. If that's what you're going for, that kind of calligraphy looking writing that people have on signs, around their houses or on invitations to things, the kind of fancy lettering, that's usually the difference. Fancy lettering usually has little serifs, and I'll say regular handwriting doesn't have those little fancy guys at the top. So if you want it to look a little more fancy, just give your guys little shelves, here and there. Not a necessity, but if you're wondering what the difference is. All right. And I can certainly fill this heart in. I can make it red. I can make it match my flowers. I can do an outline around it in red. There are so many things that you can do with this. And I'm really excited to see what you all do with them. Like I said, if you've been here with me, I had some people who have been in this class since I started. I think it was in 2018. So if you've been with me through all of these classes, thank you so much for being a part of it. I know that I come in and teach the classes, but if you've ever been in a class like me, or if you're just looking at what I've done here, none of my paintings ever come out the same. When I do a class like this, I always have to do 2 paintings. I do the one that I bring with me to the class, and then I do the one in class live with you. And they never come out the same. So if this is one of your first classes, or if you're just starting out your kind of interest in painting, just know that if you are taking classes like this, and it doesn't come out exactly like the instructor or like my painting, then that's all that I can do too. The best part of it is not to make an identical copy of what I've made, it's to make the version of the painting that I've made that makes more sense to you. So use your own style, use your own colors, put your own little spin on it, and that's going to be the better painting than just replicating mine identically. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what all you guys have done. Please send me pictures. I will be looking out for them. Again, if you have questions, please let me know in the comments. I will try to answer them. It has been so great teaching this class. I'm really going to miss it. Thank you to anybody who has ever come to the class or who's done them online. They did a lot for me, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, being able to bring these classes to you guys online. It's definitely different than doing an in-person class, but it was something that I was glad that I had and was still able to share with you guys. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to seeing what you've made.